Today on Know the Truth with Philip de Courcy.
Money is like nitroglycerine. Handling it doesn't kill you. Mismanaging it will kill you. If we handle it properly, invest it wisely, give it generously, understand its purpose in the light of eternity, money is a good servant. But you mismanage it, nothing but heartache and hurt are the result.
It's tempting to err on extremes when it comes to money, but instead of seeing money as either the source for all happiness or the root of all evil, the Bible gives us a much more balanced perspective. Today on Know the Truth, Philip de Courcy continues a study in the book of Proverbs and outlines ways to be guarded and godly in our pursuit of material gain. It's the second part of a message titled Managing Your Money, and if you missed the first part, you'll find it online at ktt.org. Here's pastor and Bible teacher, Philip de Courcy.
A number of years back, a book came out entitled The Day America Told the Truth. It was a book that explored the values that governed the beliefs and the behavior of most Americans. And to tell you the truth about this book on America telling the truth is that it doesn't make very encouraging reading. This book tells us that only 13% of Americans see all the 10 Commandments as binding on us today. 91% lie regularly at home and at work. A third of AIDS carriers admitted to not telling their lovers. Most workers admitted to goofing off for an average of 7 hours, almost one whole day a week. And half admitted to regularly calling in sick when there was nothing wrong with them. The survey went on to pose this question: what are you willing to do for $10 million? Here's the discouraging results. Quote, 25% said they would abandon their families. 23% said they would be willing to become a prostitute for a week. And 7% said they would be willing to kill a stranger. Isn't that amazing? What people would do for $10 million. In fact, if you think of that last statistic, 7% would be willing to kill a stranger. That means that when you're in a gathering of 100 Americans, 7 of them would be willing to kill you for the right price. If you multiply that to 1,000, it would be 70. Seems to me that survey is a very vivid reminder of a pressing reality. And that is that if we do not put a proper value on money, money will begin to determine our values for us. Money has that kind of power. Because money is not simply a medium of exchange, it's a daily issue of influence. An issue that determines what we hold dear, an issue that will betray ultimately the bottom line of our heart's commitment. I would urgently say to you that if you and I do not learn to manage our money will turn around and begin to manage us. That's why we need God's wisdom on our wealth. Proverbs 16, verse 16, how much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. We need God's wisdom lest our wealth be used up wantonly and wickedly and wastefully. So let's come back to the book of Proverbs here, as God gives us principles and practices for financial fitness. Well, we're moving on now to what I call the pursuit of money. Commerce and trading of material things, as we have noted in an earlier study, it's part and parcel of life on earth. God sees no wrong in material wealth. In fact, God expects man to pursue and possess material wealth and health. The Bible would have us know that money is not the root of all evil, or the amassing of it, or the having of it. Rather, it is the love of money. It is making it a god rather than using it as a tool that makes it an evil thing. Money is neutral, morally speaking. It depends on our hearts. It depends on how we use the money we have in our hands. The love of it can lead to all kinds of evil. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. Therefore, that seems to me that as you and I eke out a living, as we manage God's resources and blessings, we have to be cautious and we have to be righteous. If it's God's and He's given it to us for righteous purposes, then we ought to be guarded and we ought to be godly in our pursuit of material possessions. Let me develop those two thoughts. We must be guarded in our pursuit of money, and we must be godly in our pursuit of money. Let's take up the idea of being guarded. As we've said, there's nothing wrong with money. It's what you do with it. It's the motives that lie behind your spending of it or your dealing with it that determines its moral quality. There's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. But it can become a catalyst for all kinds of evil if we pursue it without godly ambition. In fact, the book of Proverbs warns us about the danger of desiring money in an ungodly fashion. Look at Proverbs 23 and verse 4, and you'll see what I mean. Here's one example of what I'm talking about. In fact, it is echoed by Paul in 1 Timothy 6, verse 9, where he warns the believers at Ephesus not to desire to be rich. Well, we have that similar thought here in Proverbs 23, verse 5. Do not overwork to be rich. Yes, it is normal and natural to pursue financial security so that you might bring what God has given you into His storehouse, so that you might meet the needs of your family, so that you might alleviate the poor through loving your neighbor with financial giving. But in all of those pursuits, keep it all in check. Do not overwork to be rich. Because according to verse 5, riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven. We need to be guarded. There are dangers when it comes to finances. In fact, according to Proverbs 28 and verse 11, one of those dangers is that as a man accrues money, he begins to find his security in that money, and he begins to trust his own ability to manage his life, and he loses sight of God, and he takes credit for what belongs to God in terms of His glory. The rich man is wise in his own eyes, but the poor has understanding. Money can ruin a man's life and legacy. It can leave him trusting in himself. It can rob him of true happiness and distract him from the true purpose of life itself. In Proverbs 1, verse 19, so are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain. It takes away the life of its owner. Isn't that paradoxical? People are pursuing money, material wealth, thinking that that's where you find life. But the book of Proverbs says, no, if you pursue that apart from God, and you overwork to be rich, and you put too much value on material things, you'll actually rob yourself of life. It will leave you trusting in yourself. It will distract you from the true value of life itself. In fact, it can bring trouble to your home. Proverbs 15, verse 27 is a verse worth marking. Every dad should take a good look at this verse. Proverbs 15, 27, he who is greedy for gain troubles his own home. For money, marriages have been ruined. Children have been neglected. Money was pursued. Relationships weren't cultivated. There was a love of money, not a love of one's wife or one's child. And so the book of Proverbs warns us to be guarded in our pursuit of money. It can wreck a man's home, and it can ultimately leave him spiritually bankrupt. Look at Proverbs 13, verse 7. There is one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing. And there is one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches. The book of Proverbs reminds us that true wealth lies in what you possess spiritually. If you're rich towards God, if you're rich in faith, if you have an inheritance in heaven that fadeth not away, if you have none of those things, yet your bank balance is fat, the book of Proverbs says, in the scheme of things, looking at life from heaven's perspective, you have nothing. You've got to be very guarded with money. It has a way of worming itself into a man's heart, wrecking a man's home, messing up a man's values, switching the price tags of life itself. It can lead to a loss of contentment. It can lead to a loss of trust in God. It can lead to a loss of balance in life. It can lead to a loss of eternal perspective, and it can lead to a loss of usefulness for the kingdom's sake, because even over in 1 Timothy 6, we are told that some have strayed from the faith because they overworked to be rich. Look, folks, money is like nitroglycerine. Think about this. Money is like nitroglycerine. Handling it doesn't kill you. Mismanaging it will kill you. And money's like that. If we handle it properly, proportionately, understand why God has given us it, invest it wisely, give it generously, understand its purpose in the light of eternity, money is a good servant. But you mismanage it, and it begins to take on a place in your life. Nothing but heartache and hurt are the result. The book of Proverbs warns you about that. Craving to be rich can be a destructive thing. And that's why wisdom in the book of Proverbs is not greedy for gain. If it's God's mind to make you rich, that's a good thing. And if you're faithful in the small things, God just may bless you with more so you can manage His blessing to the blessing of others. But wisdom warns about being greedy for gain apart from the will of God. Men need to be careful, as we said by way of introduction, that their possessions don't begin to possess them. Let me give you a little checklist of questions just from this regard. It will help you to remind yourself that nothing that is God's is obtainable by money. And nothing that's ultimately important has a financial price tag to it. Let me ask you these questions and ask yourself them so that you're guarding your heart. Number one, do money thoughts consume me each and every day? Am I jealous when others are blessed and seem to have an advantage on me? Do I define success in terms of what I have rather than who I am in Christ? Do I neglect my family in the pursuit of money? Have I closed my eyes and shut my heart to the needs of the poor? Do I attempt to buy with money what only God can give? Do I live in paralyzing fear of losing my savings or experiencing a financial reverse? Do I come on Sunday morning and give God the leftovers from a table that He spread in His mercy and His goodness? Am I willing to borrow to a point of bondage to have what I want materially? Am I willing to sacrifice things better than money for money? Those are all great questions. And they will help you and I to guard our hearts against overworking to be rich. There's an old Jack Benny skit that illustrates what we're talking about here. Maybe some of you have seen it in the past, where Jack is walking along within the skit and suddenly he's approached and attacked by an armed robber who orders him to give up his money or his life. There's a long pause. The robber gets agitated and said, "Well, your money or your life?" To which Jack replies, "Don't rush me. I'm thinking." It's amazing. It's comedy. But it's kind of comedy with a poke at our lives, because sometimes if we're not careful, we can get ourselves to a position where we actually begin to think money or life, money or love, money or my children, money or my wife, money, money, money. And the Bible warns us to be very guarded about it, because the love of it brings all kinds of evil. Which brings us to the second thought here as we think about the pursuit of money. Not only must we be guarded in our pursuit, we need to be godly in our pursuit. There's a right way to make money, and God will honor it. And there's a wrong way to secure financial wealth, and God will curse it. You and I need to make our money in a way that honors God. Look at Proverbs 10, verse 2. Proverbs 10 and verse 2. This is practical, isn't it? Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, The Bible is saying that there is no profit in securing financial success and financial security if you do it in a way that God cannot bless. Because remember, your arms are too short to box God. And what you get, he can take away. And like the story of King Midas, everything you touch may turn to gold, but there will be no satisfaction in it. You can't eat gold. You can't love gold. You can't find peace in gold. So the Bible warns us about being godly. It warns us about not gaining our wealth at the expense of justice and honesty and integrity. The Bible warns us not to sacrifice our honor, our self-respect, or our good reputation for the purpose of making a buck. Look at Proverbs 16, verse 8, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Here's a warning. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. Better to be content in the will of God with little than to find yourself out of the will of God with much. Look at Proverbs 22 and verse 2. Again, a similar thought. What are you willing to give up for financial gain? A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. In the pursuit of material gain, a man must value his reputation and character above everything else. It matters a great deal how money is made. And so for a few moments, let's actually think about that. The book of Proverbs tells us how to make it and how not to make it. How are we to make our money? Number one, through hard work and honest work. Diligent and intelligent work is one of the proper ways to gain wealth. Proverbs 10, verses 4 to 5, just one example of that. We read it earlier in a study on the profit of labor. He who has a slack hand becomes poor, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He gathers in summer. He who gathers in the summer is a wise son. He who sleeps in the harvest is a son who causes shame. The God of the Bible is a working God. We are made in his image, and the God of the Bible expects us to work just as he works. And God will see to it that life won't work if you're not willing to work. God's power to provide for us is usually demonstrated in the strength he supplies so that you might flex your muscles in a good, hard day's work. So how do you make your money and know that you're making it in a godly way, in a way that God will bless and multiply? If you're willing to work hard and do an honest, hard day's work. For the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. You must be godly in your pursuit through hard work. The book of Proverbs tells us that you can receive money justly and in a way that God is pleased with if you receive it through a family inheritance. That's nice. Some of us may have indeed even enjoyed that. Some of us may be praying fervently for that. But that's another way to make money. Look at Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. God's goodness to one generation can spill over into the next. And you and I can gain good money, not dirty money, good money, if we work hard and if God in his providence should bless us through an inheritance. A wealthy businessman was asked the secret of his financial success. He said, I can attribute my success as a millionaire to a pattern consisting of 4 Ds: dedication, determination, discipline, and the death of my uncle who left me $990,000. Huh? Nothing wrong with that. Money through hard work, money through an inheritance. Finally here, money through savings wisely invested. That's another means of making good money. Money that God can bless and multiply. In Proverbs chapter 6, we're told to go and look at the ant. Proverbs 6, verse 6 through 8. There's a number of reasons, because if you look at the ant, you'll see the ant is busy and industrious. There's a great lesson there to be learned. Things come through hard work. Laziness and poverty are joined together. Another thing about the ant is they have no commanders. They are servants to each other. They are organized. There's no competition among ants. Another great lesson. But here's the other lesson. They're very thoughtful. They think ahead. They gather in the summer. They gather in the autumn or the harvest time, according to Proverbs 6 and verse 8, preparing themselves for a cold and barren winter. And so here we have a principle of saving and wisely investing. I'll give you one verse that ties in with that. Go to Proverbs 13, verse 11. Initially, you'll probably miss it if you've got a King James or a New King James. It reads this way: wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase. Proverbs 13:11. The word labor there is a Hebrew term that means in the hand or the steady hand. In fact, the NIV probably catches the flavor of it when it translates that verse like this: he who gathers money almost in his hand, little by little will see it grow. That's the point of that. He who gathers by labor, by a steady hand, by applying himself little by little, as he goes, exercising wise discipline and discernment over his money will increase. And the book of Proverbs would encourage you and I to consistently, regularly, and wisely set some money aside. Not only for a rainy day, for those things that just happen in life that you haven't put in your day planner, but for that time when you retire and are more dependent. And one of the ways that you will be able to deal with life in all its dimensions is through saving and wise investment, by thinking ahead. If you splurge with no thought of tomorrow, you are not a wise person. And you are not handling your money in a godly, God-glorifying manner.
Spontaneous spending and compulsive shopping habits can sabotage our future. Timely advice coming from the book of Proverbs. You're listening to Know the Truth and a message from Philip de Courcy called Managing Your Money, Part 2. Find the full message online at ktt.org. At Know the Truth, we're committed to encouraging, equipping, and engaging believers through the preaching of God's Word on the radio and internet. But Philip, we couldn't do it without generous, like-minded listeners, could we?
That's right, Wayne. Our listeners are a vital part of this ministry. In fact, without the gifts of our truth ambassadors and those who give generous one-time gifts, Know the Truth wouldn't be possible. As a listener-supported ministry, it's the faithful financial gifts of our listeners that allow us to plan, produce, and distribute clear, compelling, convictional Bible teaching on the radio and internet, shining the light of the gospel into a needy and dying world. And that's why we need more men and women to link arms with us to continue the delivery of God's Word. And the best way you can step forward to help us in this is by giving monthly as a truth ambassador, so that we can have a firm foundation for spreading the gospel across the country and across the world each and every day. You can sign up to be a truth ambassador at ktt.org or give us a call at 888-644-8811. You will be helping many navigate their way out of darkness and into Christ's marvelous light. And you'll also receive exclusive resources and messages from me. Wayne, would you tell them more?
Yes, when you sign up to become a Truth Ambassador, you'll receive the monthly Accord newsletter with special updates from Pastor Philip and Know the Truth, and a Truth Ambassador welcome packet, which includes recently written books by Pastor Philip and much more. And when you become a Truth Ambassador or give a one-time gift of any amount in April, you'll also receive the book, A Dozen Things God Did with Your Sin and 3 Things You'll Never Do. This encouraging book addresses anxiety over sin by reminding believers of the good news of the gospel. Written by Sam Storms, this book helps believers find freedom, joy, and peace in knowing what God has done and will never do with their sin through the redemptive sacrifice of Jesus. So call with your gift today, 888-644-8811, or give online at ktt.org. You can also write to us at Know the Truth, Post Office Box 30250, Anaheim Hills, California, 92809. And if you'd like to stay up to date on news, events, and resources from Know the Truth, then connect with us on social media. You'll find us on most major platforms when you search for Know the Truth with Philip de Courcy. I'm Wayne Shepherd. Glad you took time out for today's study. Set aside another half hour tomorrow for more biblical wisdom from Philip de Courcy and the message, Managing Your Money. That's Wednesday on Know the Truth. Today's program was produced and sponsored by Know the Truth Incorporated. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."